Good morning, folks, and welcome to Morning Coffee and a Thought. This morning, I would like to give you a thought, but also to ask you a question. We're almost approaching the middle of February. 2022 seems to be going by rapidly, and as we come to the middle of the month, we see a lot of strife and tension, people at war with each other. And that's what brings me to my question for both you and myself this morning. And that is, who are we at war with? Who are you at war with? Who am I at war with? What physical people do we struggle with? Do we have problems with? I was thinking back in the Old Testament to Numbers chapter 20. Moses and the children of Israel as they're going through the wilderness. And as Moses has put up with the behavior of this group of people over so many years, a group of people who knew how to push his buttons. In Numbers chapter 20, the community is faced with a lack of a water supply. And the community complains heartily to Moses about the dilemma. It says quarreling took place between Moses and his brother Aaron and the community. Quarreling that had gone on for years at different stop points along the way of their journey through the wilderness of Sinai. But Moses goes to God and asks him what to do about the situation. And the Lord speaks to Moses and he says to him, go to the rock and speak to it, and it'll bring forth water. So Moses and Aaron return to the rock. But by the time Moses gets there, I think the animosity between him and the people he was leading for all these years had grown to just critical mass. And instead of just speaking to this rock and having it miraculously pour forth water, Moses instead calls the group of people a band of rebels and then strikes the rock out of anger with his staff twice in order to get the water to come from the rock. The action was indeed costly to Moses. For the very vision that he had, the purpose of his life, to finally take the children of Israel into the promised land of Canaan, would not happen for him. They would enter, but he would not. Animosity against people and taking our anger against physical people never leads to a good outcome. In the book of Ephesians, Paul makes it very clear that our wrestle, our fight, is not against people of flesh and blood. It's against the unseen forces, the spirits, the powers that we don't see, that motivate people to do what they do and to behave the way they behave. And so Paul makes this distinction between the people and the human beings that we deal with every day and the real forces that motivate the actions and the behaviors of those people. And Paul says that it's those forces, those unseen forces, that we may need to make war on, not the people that we can see. And so I was very impressed in Acts chapter 28 when I read of a meeting in Rome between Paul and the Jewish leaders. It is near the end of Paul's ministry, and from the very beginning of that ministry, his fellow Jewish community in both the nation and in Judaism as a faith, did nothing but make trouble for Paul in every city he visited. He spent time in jail because of the Jewish community. He was beaten up in many places, put on trial in many places, in court cases, had to flee for his life. And finally, in Jerusalem, he is beaten almost to the inch of his life by a mob of Jews. And then there's a plot to kill him in Jerusalem before he can get back out of the city. He has to be rescued by the Romans and taken to Caesarea to some type of safety. Yet at the end of Acts, in chapter 28, after appealing to Caesar and being taken to Rome, he meets with the Jewish leaders there, and he says to them, I had to appeal to Caesar to spare my life, but I'm not going to bring any charges against my own people. Now, Paul could have. He would have had witnesses in Jerusalem, certainly the commander of the Roman legion that saved him and got him to Caesarea, knowing the Jews were plotting to take his life. But Paul says to those Jewish leaders in Rome, I bring no charges against my own people. You see, Paul lived what he taught. His battle, his war, was not against physical people. It was against what motivated their actions and behaviors. And I want to say to you today, as my thought, that whatever war you're fighting, don't let it be with physical people. There's too much war going on in our society. War of words, wars of opinions, political wars, protest wars. These need to not enter into the Christian community. Our battle is not against people of flesh and blood. We love those people. Our battle is against the unseen forces that motivate people. And sometimes it's not the other person who's in the wrong. Sometimes God needs to change our attitude, our way of thinking, in order to heal relationships. I leave you with a story that occurred, in the last few years of my life. I had a man who, for some unknown reason, became an adversary to me. And this adversarial relationship lasted for, I'd say at least 10 years. It was not an enemy I made. It was an adversary that came out of circumstance. And it led all the way to a court battle. And although I prevailed in that court battle, I was saddened, and had always been saddened by the fact that we didn't have a good relationship. And I remember years later, after this court showdown, that I was walking with some friends one day, and I brought up the subject that I was saddened about the relationship that I had with this person, that I didn't want to be an adversary, but yet I was. And it bothered me that I hadn't made it right with that person. And I remember sharing it that day as we were walking together, that it grieved me that we had never been able to make peace with each other. I found out the next day that at almost the same time that I was sharing these thoughts with my two friends, that the person that I'd had that adversarial relationship with died. And for me, that was very sad that I could not have made peace. Our war, my friends, is not against physical people, physical entities. Our war is with the powers and the unseen forces on this planet. As Paul says, principalities and powers that motivate the actions of mankind. We should be spending, I believe, a lot more time at war in prayer than we do spouting our opinions, We don't want to be clanging cymbals. What we want to be is people who represent Jesus Christ, who love everyone and pray for everyone's well-being. And so I leave you with that thought today, that our battle is not against physical human beings. Our war is waged in a much different arena, in the spiritual arena. That's where we win our battles. That's where God is allowed to take action. And we need to take our wars there, not in the earthly realm. Have a good morning, everyone, and we'll see you next week.